Welcome to our online training for PWA template revisions. We hope your family is well and safe during this coronavirus situation. We at VDOT are adjusting our business like everybody else, so this is literally from my living room to perhaps yours. My name is Rob Tiemann, I'm Director of the Project Management Office at VDOT, and welcome to our training where we're going to talk about PWA templates today. Our agenda is pretty simple. We're going to start with an overview, then we're going to move into the details of exactly what changed. We're going to get into change management, which I think is so critical to effective project management. We're going to talk about some tips, which may be helpful for everyone, as well as some resources where you can go if you have additional questions. So the questions we will answer today, hopefully for you, are why did the PMO do this in the first place? How did we approach these revisions? What changed? When is it effective? Who should care? And finally, where to go if you have additional questions. So let's start with a brief overview. This has been a lengthy process for us, and it really went through a few different phases. We started in initiation, then we went to executive concurrence, then stakeholder outreach, then we finalized the changes, and finally implementation. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. The initiation, the PMO initiated this effort some time ago, probably over a year ago, and it was incorporated into the Commissioner's business plan as a fundamental and very high priority for our department. When we had three simple goals. We wanted to revise the PWA templates, we wanted to clarify policies and procedures, and finally we wanted to implement these changes prior to the next SYIP's project coming into our system, which would be this spring. As part of this, we initiated really some groundbreaking analysis with the University of Virginia. They looked at all of our data, and we have an enormous amount of data that we really limited to try and get some real, true answers. We considered only those UPCs, those projects, after November 15, and that's important because that is the date when the 54 templates that we currently use were implemented. Prior to that, it was just really difficult to compare data across those two lines. We also thoroughly cleansed the data set, and this was pretty intensive. We took out all the tasks with zero durations, for instance. We took out all the statistical outliers. We separated the federal and state funded templates. We grouped other templates together. We really did our best to really make sure we were looking at the important data to be able to make good decisions. And we ended up with a sample set that was about 5,000 projects and 122,000 tasks, which is quite large. After we had that and we had a sense of where we thought it should head, we searched for executive concurrence, and these were the guiding principles we took to them and leadership agreed with. We thought that it should balance driving project development with current realities, and that's really important for everybody. The other thing is we based task durations on actual historic durations of the 75th percentile, and those 75% of all the tasks were completed within that time frame, and we went task by task, not project wide. And then we proved that with common sense being the logic of the schedule itself. We also extended the local templates to match VDOT templates. The reality was the actual dates showed that the local templates should be a little shorter. The decision collectively was we didn't really think that was very fair, in that the locals and VDOT are viewed the same on dashboard, and it's all part of our grand larger program, so they should be treated equally in this regard as well. So we extended the local templates to match VDOT. And we have this as the big overarching goal is to improve the accuracy of our 6-year improvement plan. We need to make sure the right money is in the right place at the right time so these projects can move forward. After that, we went through an extensive stakeholder outreach effort, and this was many, many months long. And we worked really closely with these people as well as others, but the Local Assistance Division, which was a fantastic help to this entire project. We also leveraged their working group, which they formed especially for this task. We also talked with their locality stakeholder group, as well as other VDOT divisions. We talked with community of practices, which were already established bodies within VDOT, as well as the program investment managers and the DPDEs or PE managers. Then we took all this information, and our goal with stakeholder outreach was really this, to listen, to get insights, and then make our product better, and we think we did. This allowed us to further refine the templates, and we're really pleased with what came out of this. And lastly, of course, all that leads to implementation, which went live on March 13th, 2020. So if you're creating a project right now, you are getting the new templates. So let's talk exactly what they look like. First, I want to start with PWA. We use a lot of acronyms in VDOT, and PWA is one of them, but it's a very important one. PWA is our server-based enterprise-wide scheduling application. This is based on Microsoft Project. It's not the individual Microsoft project, it's a web version intended for portfolios, which is exactly what we have, which is a collection of programs, all of which include projects. It is dynamic and logic-based schedules. All VDOT and local administered projects have a PWA schedule. PWA is the source of all project dates within VDOT, and what I mean by that is all the downstream consumers of this data, including dashboard, all those dates for schedules come from PWA. PWA also drives the 6-year improvement plan. Those dates, again, making sure the right money is in the right place at the right time, all those schedule dates come from PWA, which makes PWA schedules the project schedule. You may have your own project schedules, which you keep to yourself. I would encourage you not to, but PWA schedule is the project schedule. All projects use a project template, and this is important. If you have a project in PWA, which if you have a project, it is in PWA, it has a project template, and that's what we revised today. So you may not be able to see this slide, and I'll post this as a PDF so you'll be able to look more closely at what actually the verbiage is on the screen, but I'm going to talk generally about it, and this is just for the local assistance projects. This is Tier 1 projects. This top half right here is what the templates used to be. And we use, again, more acronyms, but Task 10 is internal codes within VDOT, which means the project agreement. Task 12, if you hear people say that, that's the PE authorization. 28 is consultant procurement, and 22 is, of course, the all-important scoping. So you can see for Task 10, for project agreement, it was 60 days. And these are working days, not calendar days, so they did not include weekends or holidays. Task 12, the PE authorization was 3 days, and 22, scoping was 130 days. Now this scoping task here included the activity of consultant procurement. And these templates were negotiated some time ago with very good intention, very good reasons for what they were doing, but we felt like the time was right at this moment to maybe readjust that just a bit. So this is what we came up with. Task 10, the project agreement is now 90 days. So it went from 60 to 90 days, and again, those are working days. The PE authorization went from 3 to 15 working days. We added Task 28. Now again, this activity was priorly included in scoping, but we separated it out for a couple reasons, not the least of which is the localities really desired that, and it helped them. Potentially, it also helps us better track what the consultant procurement times really are. So we separated this out as a sequential critical path task, and then scoping we extended to 80 days. So from 10 to 22, from project agreement to scoping, you can see used to be 193 days. It is now 315 days for an LEP project Tier 1. And the big changes, sorry, I feel like a weatherman here, don't intend to, but the major changes, we added more time to the task, and we added consultant procurement. You may not be able to see these numbers, but hopefully you can on the PDF if you have interest. It's really difficult to compare apples to apples on the VDOT versus local templates. And the reason for that is the VDOT templates have so many more tasks, whereas the local templates may have 10 to 15 or 20 tasks, the VDOT templates may have 100 or more. So comparing just durations really doesn't give you a good answer to make sure you're being fair to everybody. So what we did was we used task spans. So you can see here, we spanned from 10 to 22, from the agreement through scoping. Of course, there is no VDOT equivalent to that because they do not require a local agreement, but for information's sake, you can see that test used to be 193 days, that span, now it's 315. For Tier 2, it used to be 313, now it's 405. The second line here goes from PE authorization to scoping because both VDOT and local tasks include those tasks. So we went from, on the VDOT side, 237 to 225. On the local side, we went from 133 to 225, and the important thing here is those 225 match. So you can see the VDOT templates got moved, constricted just a bit because it actually took us less time than what the templates were showing. You can see on the Tier 2, that same span increased just a little bit for VDOT from 293 to 315, and then we took the locals and extended that out to meet 315. The bottom line here is from PE authorization through award. So you can see the VDOT templates for Tier 1 went from 1070 to 843. The locals went from 623, and we extended that out to match the VDOT at 843. On the Tier 2, they both got moved to 1177. So let's talk for a minute about change management. If you want to manage a project effectively, you're going to involve change management in your activities. Just as a refresher, for project managers, be they on the VDOT side, be they on the locality side, or project coordinators, your job is to manage within this blue box, the triple constraint, the iron triangle, goes by a few different names, but you need to stay within the budget, scope, and schedule of your project. That is your job. Budget, scope, schedule. Budget, scope, schedule. You need to move within that. In this blue line, that's where you live. That's where your project should live. And that is your main job. But things happen. And there are a lot of threats to budget, scope, and schedule. And some of these you may have experienced: political indecision, changing priorities or objectives or success criteria, inexperience or lack of knowledge and skills, be it with the project management or with those on your team, bureaucratic inertia, staff turnover, stakeholder involvement, or finally unanticipated and unaccounted risk. And these are really important because risks do change as the project progresses, and how you respond to them can really matter how you produce your projects. So some acceptable options on how to deal with risk. The first is to escalate it. The second is to avoid it. The third is to transfer it, then mitigate, and finally accept it. And these are the industry standard responses to risk. This is what you should do when things come up. It's important to note, denial is not an option. It won't get better if you just stick your head in the sand. To help with everybody, the PMO put together a change management policy, and we're very excited about this. It's the first time within VDOT we've had a change management policy that really takes into account the entirety of that iron triangle concept of how budget, scope, and schedule work together to manage a project. This is PMO 22.0. I'll show you later in the presentation how to find this. It's really short. It's just a couple pages long. I highly encourage everybody to read it. It's pretty straightforward. It talks about what to do when changes come up and how to handle it and how to move forward. A big aspect of that is the PM 102 form, and this is our change control form. Even for localities, if you don't use this form, which you're more than welcome to, it's on our website, I urge you to have something similar in place. And what this does is when a risk arises and you need to change an aspect of your budget, scope, schedule, change that iron triangle of the project, it details it. And it also details what are the resultant impacts to those other two legs of that triangle. And then it gets signatures of those going up the chain of command to approve those changes. It really protects everybody, the localities, VDOTs, but especially the project managers. So once again, I highly encourage you to use that. I want to talk for a minute about dashboard and performance metrics. 7 things I think all localities should know about dashboard. The first is local projects are on it, which I'm sure you know. The second is dashboard metrics matter, and they may continue to matter more and more as we move forward. The third is PWA is where the schedules live. Every date that shows up on dashboard for schedules, that comes from PWA. PWA, again, is the project schedule for your project. PCES, the project cost estimating system, not the workbook, but the system, is where the estimates live, and those are the estimates that are used on dashboard. There are also baselines, which I'm going to touch on in a minute, which are tremendously important, and finally, which tasks are tracked on dashboard. So let's talk about project baselines. Project baselines are basically snapshots of a schedule at a certain time. So we take those within PWA automatically, and those snapshots, those baselines, are what the actual dates are compared against to determine your performance on dashboard. So determining exactly what those baselines are and being cognizant of them is very important to the success of your project as it appears on dashboard. So in PWA, we keep about 10 baselines. You don't need to know that, but you do need to know 2 in particular. And the first one is baseline 1, which I'll call the initial baseline. That's usually the terminology we use. That is used at project initiation. So when you create a project, it is captured when the project switches from a candidate project and becomes active within VDOT's system. PWA snaps a picture of that schedule, and that becomes your initial baseline. And that is what you're compared against through scoping. And this is the template schedule. So whatever the template has, that is your initial baseline that takes you through scoping. Now the scoping baseline is a completely different story. The scoping baseline is captured at the close of scoping. And this is really important in that part of the emphasis of scoping is to capture those qualitative risks and convert them quantitatively to real schedule and budget impacts. So before you close scoping, before 22 is closed, you need to adjust your schedule accordingly, either extend it or pull it in, but based upon the project specifics. Similarly, you need to go to your estimate and adjust your estimate, because when you close scoping, when 22 actual goes in, PWA captures that baseline, that scoping baseline, and that is what you're judged against through award. Similarly, with the estimate, there's a 14-day grace period, but you need to enter that estimate promptly. Otherwise, you won't be judged correctly against what you really should be judged on dashboard. Now, which tasks are tracked on dashboard? Everybody probably knows this, and there's plenty of documentation out there that these are the 11 or so tasks that are tracked. These in orange are from the initial baseline. So these are your template tasks: project agreement, PE authorization, and project scoping. Those durations and those dates are set based upon the logic and the start date of the template. At scoping, when you change scoping, when you close scoping and you change your schedule, that's where all these dates come from. So baseline 1, you cannot change. Baseline 2, you have a lot of freedom to change, because at scoping you should have the project better nailed down. You should have the risk better nailed down and be able to convert those to real schedule and time impacts, time and money, and make the changes accordingly. And if you have any questions, a great reference guide is the PMO Task and Scheduling Guide. Now, not all of those tasks are on the local templates. So again, these are the dashboard track tasks. Most of them are in the template, but you can see that approved willingness, the adopt location design, as well as the utility relocation by others are not included in the local templates. It's very intentional. And that was working with the local assistance division. The feedback we received from the locality was really they wanted to keep the local templates as streamlined as possible. Not that you don't do these things, but they were not included in the template. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be added. So they can be added, which gives you additional milestones on the dashboard should you so choose. And if you want to add them, talk to the VDOT districts and they can work with you. So how do you change a project's baseline if you feel it isn't right, or you would like to change? The criteria and the procedures are detailed in the document I mentioned earlier, PMO 22.0, the Change Management Procedure. You need to work closely with the VDOT staff to evaluate your situation, because it's just not a desire. There is criteria that need to be matched for it to be considered. And finally, all rebaseline requests, even locality requests, need to come through the PE manager within the VDOT district to me at the PMO. So let's talk about some tips. Hopefully you'll find these helpful. The first is, if it loads, for a successful project, a cooperative partnership between the localities and VDOTs is truly essential. And the PM's job is to run within that iron triangle. You need to operate the project within the constraints of the budget, scope, and schedule. It sounds simple. It's much harder than that, but it sounds simple. And to do that, you have to practice change management procedures. You need to identify and promptly address project risk. And I would strongly encourage you, utilize that PM 102 form for scope changes or other project changes. It really does help everybody. The importance of scoping, and I want to touch on this again just because I do believe it is so important. You need to ensure the project is properly scoped. You need to use either the approved PM 100 form, which is our scoping document within VDOT. As a locality, you can use that. You can also submit a scoping report, but this is a really good form to start with, or use if you don't have something similar. And finally, be reminded that closing scoping sets that baseline too, that scoping baseline, which takes you all the way through award. So make sure your schedule and estimates are correct before you close 22. Make sure your project schedule is as desired, excuse me, and make sure the project estimates are correct in PCDS. And lastly, some resources for you. Your first resource as a locality, by far, the most important is VDOT staff. If you're within VDOT, your first resource, by far the most important, is VDOT staff. There are a lot of people who are there ready and willing to help you. Good communication, of course, is the key to success, but there are a lot of district resources, and if you're a locality, this is where you should start. There are project coordinators, your first line of defense, those people you should be working on a very regular basis who should know about your projects and be able to assist you. Also, there are project managers in VDOTs. There are PWA district schedulers. Each district has 5 people who have been specially trained in PWA and have additional authorities and access within PWA to do things that the average user cannot. So if you have a schedule issue where you need something adjusted that is out of the ordinary, contact your PWA district schedulers. There are also the PIMs and the DPDEs. They are ready to help you. The Local Assistance Division does an outstanding job of staying in communication with the localities, and they provide a lot of really good resources as well as training, but a lot of good online resources. And of course, as you're well familiar with, hopefully, the LAP manual is quite good. Chapter 12 is where you want to go specifically for information related to this. The PMO website, both internal and external, much the same information. All these are screen captures from external websites, so anybody can access these. Under information you can use, the PMO forms and the project management policy links are what I want to highlight right now. If you click on PMO forms, it takes you to this. And you can see here highlighted in yellow, hopefully, the scoping report, which is the PM100 form, which I mentioned earlier, which is a tremendous assistance to you if you don't have anything as a locality to really shape what scoping should look like and help you through that process. And the project change control form, the PM102 form, again, I highly recommend you use that as changes come up on your projects. Under the project management policy link on our website, that takes you to this interactive screen right here. And I want to highlight what's in yellow right here, which is change management policy. If you click on that, it takes you to the change management policy. My final thoughts for all project managers and project coordinators, very near and dear to my heart. The first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. The last is to say thank you, and in between, the leader is a servant. And that's, of course, by Max Dupree. I wish you great luck and great success in the management of your projects, and thank you very much for your time.